Phillipson, the Shadow Education Secretary, joins me now. She's also the Labour MP for Houghton and Sunderland South. Nice to see you, Ms Phillipson. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. Now, you've said that you want Rishi Sunak to come clean about Rwanda. You're calling for the publication of documents which seem to indicate that the Prime Minister isn't exactly enthused by his own central immigration plan. Although my question to Labour would be, how on earth does that help solve the crisis involving illegal immigrants coming to this country in their droves?
Yeah, the Prime Minister this morning again refused to answer questions on this. I think it was far from clear about why his position has changed. It's because it's all about the Conservative Party. It's about internal management there. It's not actually about getting serious about dealing with the cross-border smuggling gangs, about making sure we are effective at tackling that we're cutting the backlog where it comes to asylum cases and stopping the use of inappropriate hotels. That's what Labour's plan involves, getting tough on the gangs and making sure we're clearing that backlog.
But if you don't support the Rwanda plan, what I'd like to know is if Labour does come into power and people have been sent to Kigali, what would you then do with those people? Bring them home?
Well, it's far from clear whether the plan will have sent anyone to Rwanda because, you know, we've sent more Home Secretaries to Rwanda than we have asylum seekers. And
but even if it does,
even if Rwanda were to be an effective intervention, well, even if it were to be effective, you're talking about between 100 to 200 asylum seekers. It's 1% of the backlog of claims that we're facing at the moment. So it's just not the answer. It's a gimmick. What we need to have is a serious plan, as Labour has set out, around tackling those cases, that huge backlog of cases, and ending the use of inappropriate accommodation such as hotels.
Let's get on to your patch now in education. I saw the interview that you did this morning with the Sunday Times. I know you're speaking at the CSJ this week, the Centre for Social Justice. They've just come out with a report about missing children. They've done a lot of reports on the missing children of lockdown particularly, and they've come up with this stunning statistic to suggest that 1 in 4 parents are pretty casual about whether or not they send their children to school. I mean, are these parents bad parents, Ms Phillipson?
It's deeply concerning, the levels of persistent absenteeism that we're seeing. I mean, my message to parents is that it's vital that children are in school. Every day at school counts. It has an impact not just on their kids' life chances, but also on the learning and opportunities for everyone in the class. Because what I hear from teachers is that it is disruptive if you've got people in school and then not in school. I know this is a complex issue that we're facing, and it does require a long-term plan. That's what I'll be setting out this week in the speech that I'm giving. But we've got to get serious about it. There has to be an urgency, and the plans that I'm setting out will provide support for parents and families who are struggling. So mental health counsellors in our secondary schools, mental health, open access mental health hubs in our communities, because it's about parents doing their bit, but about government doing our bit as well, and that's what an incoming Labour government would do.
OK, but an incoming Labour government is also going to put VAT on private school fees. The Independent Schools Council predicts that this could cause 40,000 pupils to leave the private sector and then need to be educated in the public sector. How on earth is the Labour Party going to be able to produce enough classrooms and indeed enough teachers to educate the children that can no longer be educated in private schools?
I believe that children in our state schools deserve urgent access to mental health support more than private schools need tax breaks. And that's just a straightforward question of political priorities. By ending the tax breaks that private schools enjoy, we'll deliver better mental health support, more teachers into our classrooms, and improved access to help for our youngest children as well. That's what drives me. That is my priority. And I simply don't accept a lot of what's been said from the Independent Schools Council. And my focus will be on driving the life chances of the vast majority of children in our country who attend state schools, the 93% of kids in our country.
OK, so let's just set a Conservative estimate that the ISC has over-exaggerated the exodus that could happen as a result of your flagship, frankly, education policy, and only 20,000 private school pupils leave and need to be educated in state schools. Practically, how on earth are you going to educate them? Where are they going to be accommodated? You're the one that's been banging on since you've been in post that we don't have enough teachers and that classrooms are too full. So how are you physically going to educate these children whose parents can no longer afford the fees?
Because if you look at the work from the Institute for Fiscal Studies, the independent body that's considered all of this, they're clear that our policy would raise between £1.3 to £1.5 billion net. So taking account of all of that, that's a considerable sum of money that we could invest. I would say alongside that, private schools have year after year put up their fees way beyond inflation, well beyond the means of most parents, including middle-class parents who might have in the past considered sending their children to private school. But in addition to that, what we're also seeing is a demographic shift that means, sadly, we're in the position at the moment where schools are merging and closing because of the falling numbers of children that we're seeing in our country of school age.
I'm sorry, but you're still not addressing the question. I'm asking you in practical terms, are you going to have makeshift classrooms set up? Because Keir Starmer said that you're expediting this policy. You're not going to waste any time. So people could already preemptively be thinking, I'm going to pull my kids out of school come September. We've got an autumn election. You're 20 points ahead in the polls. Labour are going to get in. I won't be able to afford it. So how are you going to accommodate, as soon as you get into office, thousands more children in the state system?
As I say, I simply don't accept some of the rhetoric from the Independent Schools Council. But what we are seeing at the moment is what we're seeing at the moment in terms of a demographic shift within our schools means that we are seeing fewer and fewer children of school age coming through the system. Actually, we're in a position where, you know, in many parts of the country, schools are starting to merge or to close because of that shift. So, but I just don't accept the rationale.
But no,
alongside that, I would say
saying you don't
schools
accept
have decisions. Private schools have got choices they can make.
Shadow Minister, I'm sorry.
That they can make too. We're in the, you know.
That's not a practical answer to my question. And equally, we've got a number of much smaller independent schools saying that they face closure. So you've got a double whammy of parents pulling their children out of private schools and some private schools closing. You're advocating a policy that is closing schools down. What is going to happen in a practical sense to those pupils when Labour gets into power? You could be into power 1 month after the new school term and have a load of pupils with no classroom to attend. What's going to happen to them?
Well, in terms of what private schools have been saying, one private school last week was saying that they wouldn't pass on any VAT fees to parents, that they would absorb that cost and they would make it work. I think there are cost savings that private schools could make. They've put up their fees 20% above inflation in recent years. It is way beyond the means of most of your viewers to send their children to private school. More than £16,000 a year on average for one child. It's beyond most of the people that I represent. I imagine it's beyond most of your viewers. And that's why I want to focus on delivering a brilliant state education for the vast majority of our children in this country who go to state schools. That's my priority.
So as far as I can tell, we're going to have possibly thousands of children without school places in September potentially, but anyway, Ampleforth can afford it, Eton can afford it. Lots of much smaller schools have told the ISC they'll have to close down. I like to ask everybody on this show, first show of the year, a yes-no question, if you don't mind, Ms Phillipson. Chris Skidmore. Okay. He's abandoned the Tories. Would you like to see him cross the floor? Would you take Chris Skidmore into the Labour Party? Yes or no? I'm not especially interested in that, no, to be honest. I'm more interested in winning the by-election in Kingswood that we're about to have. That's what I'm most interested in, and we'll be fighting a really tough campaign there. All right, fair enough. Thank you very much for speaking to me this morning, Bridget Phillipson.